Just a little more than 100 days before Americans actually vote for president, what to look for. I'm Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.
I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today.
And this is Election Matters. Susan, we thought this would be a good time to talk about what we should be looking for between now and when Americans vote, because we have just a little over 100 days now before November 6th, right?
That's right.
Believe it or not, it used to be a year away and 6 months away, and now we're getting closer and closer. First off, the vice president, right, the announcement that Romney has up his sleeve is certainly going to make a difference when he makes the announcement, at least in the short term, right? I mean, he has the opportunity to capture the attention of the media for at least a few days, and of course, there'll be all the scrutiny of the pick and all that. So that's an opportunity his campaign's really trying to figure out exactly how to maximize.
So we'll look at the person he chooses. I mean, that gave John McCain a big bump last time when he picked Sarah Palin. Really energized a lot of Republicans, although it was complicating down the road. And it also gives him a second voice, someone else who can go out and be really his top surrogate at places he can't be.
And just guaranteed media face time, right? Romney will be dominant in the news for those several days when he does it. He will do it before the convention, unless he's really unusual and announces at the convention. And of course, the convention's coming up the 27th of August. Very good.
But before that, on July 27th, we have the Olympics beginning. And the Olympics are an interesting period in presidential campaigns. It creates some special challenges for candidates because they have the problem of breaking through when people are not looking at politics, they're looking at how the Americans are doing in the Olympic sports. And it's also, I think, considered a little harder to be negative, so harshly negative, at a time when Americans are kind of pulling together. We think we'll see national advertising, perhaps the only national advertising that we see through this entire season.
Both campaigns are going to buy time in the Olympics.
Buy time during the Olympics, and some of that will be national. So people who are not in swing states may finally have a chance to see some of these ads.
Now, Mitt Romney himself is going to show up in London, right? He's not in the Olympics, but he's going to show up. Right.
And of course, he formerly ran an Olympic game in Salt Lake City.
Sure.
And his wife's horse is competing in the Olympics in the
now,
dressage.
Is that good or bad? We don't know for the Romney campaign, because that's been a symbol of wealth for some who criticize Romney. But on the other hand, maybe that'll be a plus.
Dressage is a pretty elite sport. On the other hand, he's competing on the American team, so maybe Americans will get behind him.
Now, Michelle Obama is also going to make an appearance there.
That's right. She'll be representing the White House.
But not Barack Obama.
But not Barack Obama.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting period of time. Now, following that, we're into August then. And of course, the next big event, as we discussed, will be the two conventions. This year, it's the Republican convention that comes first in Tampa Bay, 27th of August. And then into September, believe it or not, before the Democratic convention starts in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, you were just talking to Chris Lezian, a professor at Temple, who had done some summiting with us, a real expert on the timeline of election campaigns. He said, and I think we would agree, these conventions can matter.
You know, he told me that the conventions matter more than the debates. You know, I've always thought of the debates as being a really defining
Even though the
moment.
conventions have no real function.
They don't,
like
they
they
don't decide things, right?
Yeah.
We know who the nominee is going to be, but he says this is the point where voters who have not been paying very much attention really tune in. A lot of voters will tune in and see those big speeches that the candidates will give on the last night of each of the conventions, and they'll start to draw conclusions about what they think and who they want to support.
Now, polling-wise, we certainly expect bounces. We love the convention bounces. The Republicans to go first, so typically Romney will get a bounce in our tracking poll. He'll move ahead of Obama. Then Obama will counter with his bounce from the Democratic convention. So what really matters is coming out of the two conventions, where does the race, does it settle back down to even, or will one or other of the candidates maintain a lead coming out of those conventions? So that'll be what we'll want to monitor polling-wise.
So that's what we'll be looking at in September, when there'll also just be a barrage of ads. I mean, if you live in one of the states that's contested, you might as well, if you turn on your TV set, you're going to be seeing ads for one candidate or the other.
All very positive, uplifting ads,
Well,
right?
almost all the ads now have been negative. Almost all the ads in the last 2 weeks, more than 90% of them have been negative, and that is likely to continue when you look at September's ads.
And then in October, the debates. October 3rd is the first debate. The Commission on Presidential Debates plans 3 presidential debates. And then 1 vice presidential debate. And those certainly can make a difference. Clearly, like in 2004, concerns about Reagan's age were allayed when he made his clever, planned joke about who wouldn't make Walter Mondale's youth an issue in the campaign and so forth. And of course, we all know in history, 1960, The story is, of course, that Nixon lost because of the debates, because he looked kind of tired and was sweating, and Kennedy looked tanned and looked young, right?
Well, it's definitely true. In '84, first you had Reagan do not so well in the debate and then really come back strong. In 1980, there was just one debate, and that was, I think, very decisive in convincing Americans that they could support Ronald Reagan, and was a big factor in Jimmy Carter's failure to get a second term.
Romney certainly practiced in debating. He did it all through the primaries, and Obama's pretty good as a debater as well. So I think it'll be very interesting to watch.
It should be. And one last thing to look for in those very final days, November 2nd, the last unemployment number comes out, the number for October. And by that time, people's attitudes are pretty well set. And by that time, a lot of people will have voted early, voted absentee, but man, we'll all be looking for that number in the last days.
And finally, we'll want to look for a surprise. Everybody thinks both campaigns will be cooking up some surprise to come out of the last minute. We'll see what happens on that. Our Presidential Election Center at Gallup.com, by the way, has all the historical data. We've been talking about history. You can line up Obama and Romney versus all the previous candidates going back as far as we have data. It's really a fascinating way to do this kind of historical
all the way back
analysis.
to 1936.
Yeah, really fascinating. The Presidential Election Center, you'll find it at Gallup.com. Fascinating 100 some odd days ahead, Susan.
It is. And one thing we've learned in the Gallup polling is how much attention Americans are paying to this.
73% following closely,
Yeah.
and that's much higher than the average news story we've tested over the last decade. So despite people thinking people are tuned out, hey, Americans are paying some attention already. I'm Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.
I'm Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today.
And this is Election Matters.